We're on.
Hi, everybody. It's Ann and John and Kerry Ford hosting John McIntosh in the Q&A. And we were having technical difficulties with the platform. Was very choppy, didn't really have a good audio or visual for either of us. So we figured we would move over to Zoom, record the Q&A on Zoom, and then make it available to you. So you're going to have to look at both of us at the same time. But it's just different. It's not even going to be a problem for us. So today's Q&A is called Life Purpose. And you know, if you've missed any of the former Q&As, you can certainly access those through John's personal Facebook page and from his personal interweb page. That's all I'm going to say about that. There's no chance to ask any questions live since we're not with an audience right now. But if you do have a question from watching this or from watching any of the previous Q&As, please send them to globalpeaceweb@gmail.com. And we'll be happy to get your questions answered in a future broadcast, if we have one. We'll see. So again, my name is Ann Kerry Ford. I'm happy to be your host, and I'm just going to turn it over to John right now and hear what he has to say before we get into some of the questions from before.
Okay. I'm sure that all of you are experiencing the kinds of glitches that this situation right now is the result of. The energies, you could say, on the planet, those that are obvious through the manifestations of a lot of chaos that's going on, but also and mainly those that are not obvious, that are somewhat more subtle, are directly responsible for all kinds of anomalies, hiccups in one's day-to-day life, and this will become the norm as the dysfunctional patriarchy, which has basically finished now, continues to collapse away, and we move into what I call the age of light, where the divine masculine, divine feminine are balanced. But let me just digress slightly into the broadcast. This is number 10. Normally we would do it through this other platform we're using. It's not working, as Ann has explained. What we will do is we'll transpose it onto YouTube, and then beneath the video will be the standard information on the broadcast, which will include the links to ask questions, the links to see previous broadcasts, and whatever other information is required in order for you to continue to participate in what we're now doing for the 10th week. So you won't miss anything. You'll find it all posted on my Facebook. I'll put it in my blog, and you should have easy access to it for yourself and for passing it on to others as well, tagging them if you like. So the topic for this week, which I wrote an article on a few days ago, Life Purpose, I wanted to have in a recorded format because obviously this is why we're doing this. Some people prefer or enjoy the interaction of a live format, not necessarily better than, but as well as the printed word. So in talking about life purpose, let's just look at how the false self looks at it. And that is generally related to a feeling of specialness, like I'm unique, I'm an individual. And as a result of that, I don't necessarily know what it is, but I have a purpose in my life. And it could be I'm supposed to be an actor, or I'm supposed to be a leader of a country, or it could be I'm supposed to be an electrician, It could be I'm supposed to be a gardener. It could be I'm supposed to be an author. It could be 1,000, 10,000, a million different possibilities. But most people, so-called people, which is the body, mind, identity, or false self, person, believe that they have their own unique purpose. Particularly spiritually oriented people feel that once they've got a little knowledge, spiritual knowledge, they feel that they have some purpose, some obligation, some responsibility to go out and share this with the world. This is absolutely false. There is only one purpose that each so-called individual, there are none really, it's just an appearance in the dream, have, and that is to wake up completely to the God that you are, to the self, large capital letters. Until then, you're not really living, you're dreaming. And any purpose that you might have in the dream is just a dream, and it doesn't have any effect on truth at all. It can rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic, but the ship still sinks. The objective is to get out of the dream, not necessarily to leave it. You may be completely free and stay in the dream for whatever purpose then you may have. But until that happens, your only purpose is your own personal freedom. You have no obligation, no responsibility, no specialness at all. Specialness is separation in the dream, except for your own personal freedom. This is not something the false self likes to hear. It's convinced that it's got some special mission that it's supposed to accomplish. And this just keeps you dreaming deeper. So you can accept that or reject that, but I can assure you that until you are free and are living your life off the stage, knowing that the stage is a dream, you're still, the body is still there, but you're not participating in it. You are there for only one reason, and that is to be free, totally free. Until then, there's no other obligation, no purpose, whatever. Okay, so let's just go to the first question.
Very good. This is from Anonymous, who asks, how important is the support of others, like community, family? As I go deeper, I am finding more and more connections are falling away. I feel invisible. Perhaps the dream is pulling things apart. How important is it to have the presence of others who are on the same wave, even to read a post or feel support? Is the solitude more important?
I feel that everyone who is on, let's call it the spiritual path. There is no path in reality because you're not going anywhere. But it's a familiar term. Everyone that's there has this longing to have the company of, association with others that are on the same wavelength, particularly at the beginning when you're what I call toe dipping from the dream into the spiritual alternative. And I don't mean religious, I mean the spirituality. There is a tendency, a desire, sometimes a very strong desire to be in the company of many others. And it may be at that phase of your inner search, it can be extremely valuable to be in that company. But as you go deeper, the tendency is many friends, family, acquaintances, spiritual associations, some of them very close, will fall away because there are very few, relatively speaking, percentage-wise, that are ready to stand in the fire of who they are not, no matter what, as I constantly say, which is total surrender. There's very few. Some are close to it, but they hang on to this or that conditioning, which is very important to them. And they end up hitting a plateau, which is okay. Doesn't matter. You have eternity to be free. And they stay there. And this can actually then feel like a bit of an anchor if you are completely dedicated to freedom. If you are still associated with someone that's sort of swirling around on that merry-go-round of this, the same loop, you could say, and not going deeper because they won't let go of this or won't let go of that. There is no fault. There's no good person, good guy, bad guy. It's just that's where they are. And inevitably, this is what happens. More and more fall away. Let's say, however, that you have gone very deep and that you've met or are meeting others that are in the process of doing exactly the same thing. This is not something you look for. This is something that will happen automatically. And it may be a phase. They could be with you for a few weeks, a few months, a few years, and then they disappear as well. But it's a different kind of disappearing. And very often silence, or as this questioner has said, solitude, stillness, this will be where much of your clock time will be. But there may be a number of people, usually, probably very few, and of course now it can be anywhere in the world with instant communication, that you resonate with and occasionally will communicate with. And in general, you're not looking for new information. There is no new information. There is the self, and there is what's seemingly blocking the self, which is conditioned, clouds that hide the sun. There's nothing new to talk about. There's no new ways and means. It's just dissolving the conditioning. So the resonating with, the time spent with, communication with, is usually just a moment of joy. It's like smelling a flower, listening to some sublime music, being in nature, many other aspects of the dream which most closely align with the truth that you are, not that you have, but that you are. Is there a necessity for this? Absolutely not. You could be completely alone and communicating only with the inner teacher, inner guru. Some people call it Satguru, whatever you want to call it, but the inner voice, which is just the self talking to the self. That may be the only communication you have. This is rare, but it does happen. It's likely there'll be someone or some others that you communicate with periodically, but it's not the buddy friendship. Let's go to the shopping mall. This kind of thing is gone. It comes up when it comes up, and it's usually totally spontaneous. You don't make plans per se. You might meet for a coffee, and maybe you do it regularly. I do that myself with a close friend that lives in the town that I'm in. And this happens whenever it happens, but it's usually every week, and it's just a warm, loving exchange of truth. We don't have any agenda. We don't have any script. There's no schedule. We're not covering anything. It's just whatever comes up. And it's quite beautiful. So no necessity. The self will orchestrate whomever you're supposed to be associated with, if you are. So that's
wow, that's wonderful.
hopefully.
Thank you. This is a question that just came in from your recent blog post about life purpose. So this is also from someone who would like to remain anonymous. She says, she or he, I'm not sure, today's post about physical pain is quite tough for me. As one who has lived with long-term chronic pain for years and years, it is my hope and belief that this kind of deep physical pain leads to an even deeper self-inquiry, though I'm not yet sure where that would lead or what form it would take. I almost feel like I'm starting anew and have made minimal progress, not even sure what self-inquiry questions to ask about these issues of pain. As an adopted person, I know very little, of my current incarnation's past, and it's not a pretty picture at all. I thought I was given a little weight to it and forgiven the characters of the play, but perhaps I'm still living, believing in the effects on me. Any suggestions or guidance? I know you're not a therapist, and goodness knows I've gone to plenty of the world's therapists, but the physical pain still manifests. I try to ignore the pain as much as possible, but still pursue the so-called healing modalities of the world in an effort to minimize the pain. I'm guessing that many participants have the same wondering.
Right. That question just came in the last hour and a half, and I felt that it was germane enough to bring into today's talk. Many people probably resonate with this because suffering, very often physical suffering, not necessarily of yourself. It could be a sibling, it could be a family member, it could be a close friend. But generally speaking, personal physical pain is a very effective instrument for bringing a person to their knees, first of all, to surrender, and then turning them directly inward and focusing on truth. There is, however, an aspect to pain, which is quite normal, especially in the beginning, and that is I'd like to get rid of it. And so what do? You go to various healers, from allopathic to natural, and you may get incredible results, 100% cure, so-called healing. But, and I mentioned this, I believe, yesterday as well in another article, unless the conditioning, which was the cause behind the illness, is addressed, then it will go somewhere else. So if someone has, for example, cancer, and they take radiation and it works and they're in remission, and then 3 years later you hear that they've got it again. This is the same conditioning which has not been looked at, perhaps because the person didn't know anything about conditioning. But ultimately, when you turn within, you will be shown that it is conditioning. Whether it's that word or not doesn't matter. You will be shown. When you turn within, all the answers come to you that are perfect for you in the moment. You don't have to look outside for answers. Another question is, who is it that is talking about I'm getting better, I'm growing, I'm evolving? Who is this? This is the first question to ask, is who am I? That's self-inquiry. There is no one getting better. There's no such thing. You're not evolving. You're not moving from this level to that level. The clouds, which is conditioning, that hide the sun, which is the self, the real you, the God you are, simply dissolve as a result of looking at who you're not. Self-inquiry is looking at who you're not, exposing, shining light on who you are not. So the question, who is it that's experiencing chronic pain today, this moment? The answer is always me. And the question then is, who am I? And I like to add, thy will be done. This is throwing light on who it is that thinks that they are the person, the entity, the being that's experiencing pain. No, the self, the real you, as long as it's in a body, is going to experience pain, but it doesn't suffer when it's away. Because it doesn't believe in victims. Victims has to do with a hierarchy of haves and have-nots, which is based on the belief in separation. And separation is the reason that we have the manifested physical universe, world, and the body that we seem to occupy. There is no suffering when you're free. Pain, yes, because you're still in a body. So let's get back to the idea of reducing pain. Well, let's say that this being has fully awoken, is free, sitting in the audience watching the play, but the body still hurts, maybe a great deal. The body has its own destiny. And for example, Nisargadatta, Ramana, both of them, I believe, died of a sickness, might have been, I think it was cancer. And they had, obviously, the signs and symptoms of that in the latter days of the physical body's existence. And so naturally, there was pain. I don't think either one of them took pain relief for it. But they knew that the body was not who they were. The self that was fully free at that clock time was fully aware that this body is not me, but it was also experiencing pain, and perhaps intense pain. But it wasn't suffering because it doesn't believe in it, meaning you, the only one that there is, knows that suffering has to do with victims and the belief in separation. So don't expect that the pain that you have if it's chronic pain or intermittent pain or whatever it is necessarily going to disappear when you're free. Sorry to say that, but it may very well be that it's going to continue. You can call this karmic, but I don't use the word karma. I use conditioning because the word karma has so many connotations and conditioning doesn't. It's just attachments, expectations, and identifications tied to memory and imagination. Not complicated. That's a mouthful. Sounds complicated, but it isn't. You may find that when you're free, a number of different kinds of pain will reduce. For example, in my own case, for 30 years, I've had a thing called tinnitus. And as I speak to you right now, I notice it. But until I mentioned the word to you in this explanation, I haven't heard it since I don't remember when. It's there, but I don't notice it. So what you put your attention on, of course, is going to expand. I'm telling you that because it's been there. And of course, I've talked to various sources about what could be done here and there. But if I don't notice it and it's there, then is it there? You see, this is what the dream is all about. Things are there only because you believe they're there. So don't expect necessarily that the body is going to, you could say, miraculously get so-called better, free of pain or illness and pain, just because you're free. You could be free in the next 5 minutes because you all of a sudden become aware of the fact that the world and the universe is a dream. When I say aware, I don't mean mentally. I mean in the heart, in the self, in the awareness. This is a dream. When you're clear on that, you're free, but you still have baggage, or as I call it, baggage or echoes or whispers of conditioning. So you're in the audience watching the play, you're free, but you still have some conditioning, which leaves very, very quickly. Once you move into freedom, you're completely focused on who am I, which is basically going to dissolve all the conditioning very, very fast. So it's really important and helpful if you understand that the pain which brings most, and suffering, which brings most to their knees and then to surrender and then inward, is a blessing, unfortunately, but it's a blessing. And it is the most, and this can be circumstances, not just the body. And it is the most effective way of getting a person to turn inside. It doesn't necessarily go away when you're free, because the body has a completely separate destiny from, you could say, from the false self or the mind. So don't expect that. If it goes, it goes. You just say yes to everything. You don't necessarily agree with it, but you say yes to everything. I know that's not necessarily the answer that you want, but that's the way the dream functions.
All right, we'll move on to another question. This is also from someone who would like to be anonymous. Hi, John. Thank you so much for the videos and the daily posts. I would like some feedback on some of the experiences, recognitions that are occurring of late. I wake up at night, almost every night, and instead of reaching for a book or a video, I meditate. As the mind quiets and I'm able to focus on the silence, I can feel the field shift and expand. Other times, just space. As I am meditating, it seems like everything, all of it, is inside of this space. Is this your experience?
Yeah, this is most definitely my experience. You are space, because there is nothing, only emptiness in the self. The universe and the world is an illusory manifestation, allowing the self to know itself through the reflection that it sees when it's looking at itself through a manifestation, a circumstance, or a thing. So space is who you are, and it's very normal. And this is, I'm going to use the word wise. I'm hesitant to use it, but this is very wise when one wakes up, let's say in this scenario, and instead of reading a book, which basically takes you outside, I mean, I write books too, and that may be very useful until it's not. you read books and you read articles and you watch shows like this one until you don't need them anymore. Or maybe you watch them because it feels good, but you don't need them. The inner voice will always tell you perfectly what you need to know in the moment. So if you, this person, are guided to go into, they're using the word meditation, I'd call it one-pointed focus, and they find themselves feeling like they're in space, as space, then this is a very, you could say, quick way of returning to the awareness of who you really are. Now, you also are love, joy, peace, beauty, freedom. These are expressions, feelings, like flowers in a garden, that occur. Peace feels different than freedom. Freedom feels different than beauty, but they're all you. But oftentimes you'll feel nothing, just the space, which is a kind of a beauty. It's way beyond the concept of something like bliss, which comes and goes. But space is of course, it can't be described because you can't put a frame around infinity. It's who you are. So this is normal, and it's quite beautiful that she's experiencing this.
Right. The next question is from Patty. And she wants to know, my question relates to something that has been happening for quite a while. When I am still and I begin to feel the separate quote unquote me dissolving or have a feeling of expansion, my head starts to nod up and down and there's nothing I can do about it, it just happens. Or sometimes I get a feeling of energy going round in circles, always at the same speed. And my head feels like it wants to physically go round in circles. Is this just a part of the dissolving of the false self, the dissolving of the way in which the real self seems to contract into what is presumed to be a separate identity? I would be grateful for any help you may have in understanding what may be happening.
For those of you that are taking their spiritual life as a priority, and therefore everything else is secondary to it, even food, shelter, and clothing. Everything is secondary to this one focus, which is freedom. The physical body, which is a dream body, and the mind, which is a dream mind, are going to experience transformations. It's a dream, so why shouldn't it just instantly disappear? Well, because there's conditioning, and the conditioning gets into what you could call the cellular structure of the body, the DNA. Also, they're dreams, but there is a kind of a memory which is associated with conditioning, associated with this body. And just talking about this particular question, some anomalies, a whole variety of anomalies can occur. A person could gain weight, they could lose weight. They could wake up with cold sweats. They could experience sleeplessness. I know one person that sleeps maybe 2 or 3 hours a day at most, although there is periods of quiet. She very rarely gets more than a couple, 2, 3 hours of sleep. There could be anomalies related to the kinds of foods that all of a sudden you don't like anymore, that are your favorites. You may feel uncomfortable being in certain environments that you used to love. Could be a simple thing like music, movies, clothing. As the conditioning leaves, which includes in your cellular and your DNA structures, also dreams, as they dissolve, as that conditioning dissolves, all manner of things happens. And I think we could probably compare this to a woman that's pregnant. All of a sudden she's got these cravings. It's not that dissimilar. You could say the spiritual metabolism is constantly changing because you're releasing. This is not the same as detoxing or healing. you're dissolving, you're transforming something which is not real, which is conditioning. And it's like clouds dispersing in front of the sun. So the sun is also shining light on that which is not true. So very often you'll see a lot of nonsense. You could call it darkness, you could call it ugliness, you could call it bad stuff, but that's just the mind interpreting, judging. It's just simply revealing that which is not you, that you haven't seen before. It's always been there, but you haven't seen it. And this can cause mental anomalies, even distress. So all manner of things, circumstances, experiences on every level can occur while you are shifting out of full sleep to full awakening. Full awakening is self-realization, where there's absolutely no conditioning at all. All manner of things can happen. And you just say yes to it. You just go with it. That doesn't mean you agree with what you're seeing or experiencing, but it is happening, so you don't resist it, because that'll cause suffering. And just know that it's an aspect of the awakening. I'm going to use the word process, which sounds like time and space, but it really isn't. You're not going anywhere. The self is there. It's just hidden behind this conditioning. But we have to use words, so the word process does sound like time and space.
Thank you. All right, this next question is from someone who'd like to be anonymous, who asks, John, does it even matter what we do in this world, since none of it is real? And when at this stage, where there is interest in many things maybe, but no enthusiasm as before to make things happen anymore, if I were to say, develop psychic abilities and work with them, would I not just be feeding the unreal?
This is a very, very common, I'll call it phenomena, particularly for people that are free with just whispers. They have very, very little conditioning left, and as a result, the dream has lost its allure. Long ago, lost its seductive ability to influence you, or swing you this way or that way. But it's lost its allure, and things that used to interest you, perhaps things that you're very good at. You could be trained classically in playing an instrument. You could be a brilliant artist or photographer. And I have friends that are all of these things that are free. And the interest that they have in these things is intermittent. It's not the passion that used to fire up their days and nights. The dream falls away. There might be, for example, to address this specific question about psychic abilities, there might be a psychic ability that all of a sudden pops up. Now, does this make you special? No. Psychic abilities deal with the relative, things that are going to happen, might happen, used to happen, this kind of thing, such as, being able to forecast what's going to happen in the future. Well, the future is an illusion. The past is an illusion. Psychic abilities are related to things that are relative. Anything that's relative changes, and anything that changes is not real. The truth, the self, never changes. There's no past or future. There's no alteration to it. It doesn't get better. It doesn't change. It's just the self. It's perfect. And that's who you are. So anything that changes, and your ability, one's ability to see these changes, is just a deeper way of recognizing how the dream is playing out. You can move from one that analyzes to a Sherlock Holmes that can see things minutely that others can't see, but you're still seeing what's not real. So is it special? No. The self is not special. It's very special, but it's not special. It's not unique. There is no individuality. There's no hierarchy of better and lesser in the self. There is only one, and one has no levels. Nevertheless, if a psychic ability, for example, came to someone who has, let's say, lost their passion for most of the world, and it seems to be of some value, even as a career within the dream, you as a free being are not going to be attached to that career. Like, for example, I write. Do I need to write? No. Do I have a desire to write? No. I am pulled to write. And when I say I am, this body, which used to be John McIntosh, is just a body that the self uses to write. And now in this case, speak. But I don't have any desire. I don't have any passion. I don't have any need. I certainly don't think that it matters whether I say or do anything. It's just I'm being pulled to do it. So if someone develops a psychic ability, let's say to be able to see dead people and talk to them and find out about this or that, then it might be useful for someone, a toe dipper who's looking at these things, and as a stepping stone for them to go deeper until finally they let go of all phenomena and just go direct to the self. This is absolutely fine, and you'll be shown this. You just don't get attached to it. If you're pulled, which is usually very subtle but also very strong, to move in a certain direction, such as I've got this psychic ability, I didn't have it yesterday, now I've got it, it's very acute, it's very strong, it seems to be of value to people, and you're pulled to use it, then you use it. You see, you're shown in each moment exactly how the self, who you really are, chooses to use the body that used to belong to a person for whatever its purpose is. But it doesn't make you special. It just gives you something that you're supposed to do with the body. That can be enormously valuable, but that doesn't matter because you're not special. You're the self, you're God.
Thank you. The next question is also from someone who wants to be anonymous, who says, I know that the world and the current worldwide situation is ultimately just an illusion, and spiritual practices and modalities that I previously followed have gradually fallen away, all but one. I learned a Merkaba practice several years ago, which is very intense and quite complicated. I have been doing a service recently connecting to others in a group Merkaba, and with the intention of holding the collective consciousness of mankind in divine unconditional love outside of time and space. My dilemma is that although the energy does seem very beautiful and pure with no agendas or expectations, I wonder if this practice is just another part of the dream and is actually keeping me in the dream. Is it one more practice that will fall away as I realize that everything that I am not? Or could it actually be a way in which the divine light is able to pour into collective consciousness? I think this question is echoing the last question.
It's absolutely echoing the last question, and the answer is yes and no. Let's just talk about unconditional love. I've mentioned it before, but the body, mind, identity, or person, the false self as I call it, is made up of, manifests as a result of conditioning. Again, attachments, expectations, and identifications tied to memory, which is the past, and imagination, which is the future. The body, mind, identity, therefore, is not real. And anything that flows through that which is not real is not real. So when you talk about unconditional love, it's not a possibility. The false self is incapable of unconditional anything because it's made up of conditioning. The self doesn't talk about unconditional love. It just is. It doesn't point to itself or its abilities or any of that sort of thing. It just is love. You don't even have to put the word unconditional on it because there is no hierarchy in love. Love is just love, and anything else is an imitation of it. Usually a pale imitation of it, loaded with conditioning. Never more so than in a relationship that you have with another person that you might be living with or married to. The perfect environment to see the mirror of who you're not is in a relationship. And the most difficult fire to stand in is in a relationship, which if you use it, can be enormously valuable in seeing who you're not. So talking about this modality, this Merkaba modality, which is a spiritual instrument that some people are aligned with, can it be useful, as with the previous individual, a psychic ability? Of course it can. Wherever an individual is, and if they feel joy, this is always the monitor that tells you that you're in so-called right place, placeless place, in the moment, in your experience, is if you feel joy. Joy is not to be confused with happiness, which is a roller coaster with sorrow. Joy is a softer feeling, and it's an unbroken feeling. It's similar to happiness, but vastly greater. It's just a feeling of well-being that, oh yeah, I just feel this is right. It's very light in terms of not, dragging you down at all. There's a lot of have-tos connected to happiness, but with joy, there's no have-tos. So if you feel joyful that you're involved in, let's say, a group that is doing focuses such as this individual has suggested with regard to a Merkaba, then for now, that's where you're supposed to be. Who are you doing it for? Well, that's the question. Who am I? Who are these people? Who is this collective unconscious? Who is this collective false self? None of it exists. Everything is for you. Everything is for you, for your freedom. No matter what you so-called do, and you're not the doer ever, you think you are, but you're not. Everything is oriented to your freedom, no matter that it seems like you're lifting the world and making this major shift on the planet. No, everything is to wake you up from the dream that you're dancing in. This is not easy to accept because the false self wants to believe that it's special, and that's what makes it unique. Also, that's what keeps it in the dream. So, to get to the last part of that, is this something that could keep me in the dream? If you're starting to have that feeling, then in all likelihood, yes, that's true. If you didn't have the feeling before, even in the midst of joy, then it was where you're supposed to be. So it's like that's something which is falling away, and that's why the question is coming up. Is this keeping me in the dream? In this case, probably, because the question wouldn't arise otherwise. It would just be, I'm doing something that I really enjoy. It feels really good, and you do it until there's a reason not to do it. And in this case, the question is nudging them in the direction of saying this is probably done. One less spiritual modality to focus on, which is always out there, never in here. Seems like it's in here, but it isn't.
This brings up a question that I have. So I'm just going to insert my own question here. It's like when you speak about unconditional love, I haven't personally given birth to children, but I've heard that when a mother first looks at her baby, that they experience that feeling of unconditional love. And I know that this is also true in animals, that they have that just unprecedented feeling of, I will do anything for this baby. That's one example. And then I also look at nature and how it just rains on whatever is in the area that it's raining on, or it just drops the fruit, or it just, the river doesn't care what it's carrying, it just carries it. It seems like Mother Nature, you could say, is also an example, a template of unconditional love. I just wonder if you have any comments about either of those.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure everyone has thought this, asked this question perhaps very deeply. Vignettes of unconditional love occur for everyone. You can take the most hardened criminal on the planet, a mass murderer, and they're in jail. And I think they have programs for some prisons where they allow animals to come in, stray animals and that sort of thing. They find that it calms them. And in those instances, and there's probably videos on this, I don't know, I haven't seen them, but I seem to recall hearing about this. You can see a tenderness that is a complete dichotomy with the conduct of that individual throughout most of their life. Is that unconditional love? Absolutely. In that moment where tenderness and compassion and gentleness is expressed, in that moment, which may only last seconds, because we get diverted, sidetracked by the mind and the thousands of thoughts that are flowing through it throughout the day. But in that moment, they are experiencing the self. But it's a vignette because there's all these clouds, just the same as the sky that's full of clouds. And then there's this little ray of sun that peeks through the clouds momentarily, and then the clouds hide it again. That's a moment of truth. That's a moment of the self. And it's exactly how it works. With nature and with animals, insects, fish, birds, they don't have what most people call free will. There's no such thing as free will. Only within the dream is there free will. But within the dream, there is free will. Nature doesn't have that. It's flowing with the truth, always. And so it expresses unconditional love all the time. Animals, when they, let's say, look at a baby, a cub, let's say, or a litter, see themselves. And so their expression is of unconditioned love because they don't have the conditioning that says, I'm a separate being. Humanity has that in the dream. It's not real, but it appears to be real. And this is what, of course, causes the enormous suffering. So moments of vignettes of unconditional love or unconditional beauty or unconditional freedom or unconditional peace occur for everyone periodically. And in the case of those that are shifting and moving deeper and deeper and deeper into the truth, dissolving conditioning, there are fewer clouds and there's more moments where that unconditionality is occurring because there are fewer clouds, until finally it's virtually unbroken, except for, as I said, the whispers that occur. And you've seen these little clouds, just a tiny little flimsy cloud that goes in front of the sun momentarily. That's like a whisper. But generally, the sky is clear for those that are free completely.
That's excellent. I have seen those videos of those hardened criminals
Oh, have you? Yeah.
in the pet programs. I'll try to find them. They're very, very moving. These tough guys that have done these horrible things are just weeping over their little bird or their little kitten, and I think, well, that's the answer. Just do that program and you'll empty out the jails pretty quickly.
I think there was a movie called Birdman of Alcatraz, which was Burt Lancaster, I think, played in that. And it's a true story of an individual who was a murderer, but he was incredible with birds.
It gives me chills just thinking about it. I'll try to find it and post it in the comments if I can.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So I don't know if we have time for one more question.
Sure, I think so.
You want to squeeze one in? This is also from someone who's anonymous. My concern, so-called, is choosing between a partnership with a decent human being who is conditioned and unaware of truth, but offers quote unquote security, manifesting by thinking and doing, and a partnership with a cherished person who is conscious and aware and following truth, but without offering security.
Well, of course, the answer to that is obvious, but it doesn't necessarily get answered in the obvious. Food, clothing, and shelter, security, safety are paramount to the false self. And as a result of that, choices are made. Virtually all choices are colored by this desperate need to survive and to feel secure. So as a result of that, of course, people will end up with, in this case, let's say a partner who provides, but they're extremely unhappy. I'm just thinking of a song by the Eagles years ago called "You Can't Hide Your Lying Eyes." And this young woman is obviously married to a rich old man. I think the lyrics were, "You won't have to worry." And then she's having an affair with a young man across town, as the song goes. And this is not unique. This is very, very common for someone to make compromising choices in order to fulfill basic needs that then end up leading to various levels of heartache, which of course, once again, is a blessing because it inevitably turns you within. It's just a roundabout way to go about things. And until someone makes the no matter what choice to be free, where this particular question and the choice related to being with someone who's sensitive that necessarily doesn't have the ways and means to provide that you know of, there isn't any question about what you would do. That's the choice that you would make. But until the no matter what choice to be free has been made, all kinds of choices are compromised by the basic needs. So it's just a question of where is this individual or others that may be listening that are in similar situations that have these two options. Where are they in terms of the level of surrender towards being completely free? I think the Course in Miracles says, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? That's not quite putting enough oomph into the question, but it basically says, would you rather be free or would you rather be secure? Because in your security, there's a feeling of freedom, but definitely not a feeling of joy. There might be vignettes of happiness, but for sure, lots of sorrow. So it basically has to do with have you chosen to be free no matter what? And if you haven't, then chances are you're going to make lots of choices that are compromising, and they will inevitably lead you to your knees at some point.
Wow. I could say a lot from my own personal experience about that, but
me too.
Instead, I think we've come to the end of our time together. I do want to encourage people to email John at globalpeaceweb.com if questions have come up for you when you were watching this, or
globalpeaceweb@gmail.com.
I'm sorry, did I misspeak?
I'm not sure. We'll have to listen to the recording.
Email.com.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. I'll have to listen to the recording.
Such an exciting day.
Yeah.
So we just want to thank you for your patience in our technical kerfuffle. We found it kind of interesting and challenging and a little bit fun, actually. So
absolutely, it's fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your patience and trying to find this broadcast.
Yeah. Well,
and, hopefully. Yeah. Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry. It will be recorded on YouTube, and then I have this one-self. My goodness, I don't even know what. I'm not sure what what, but anyway, you'll see it in the notes on my Facebook. The exact address. It's a new site, and I have on there a page where chronologically all of the videos appear. So there's no way that you'll lose track of this. It's just a slightly different way of doing it this week. We'll see what unfolds in the future, so-called future, but you won't miss this. And it is what it is, you know. Expect the unexpected. And then stop expecting anything. Just live with spontaneity. Everything is perfect no matter how it rolls out. If you're not attached to it, then it is what it is. So anyway, we'd like to thank you, both of us. I'd like to thank Anne again for your invaluable participation with me in bringing off these broadcasts, and we will probably have a number 11 next week. So we'll say goodbye for the moment. And
now stop the recording
lots
first
of love
before you. Yeah.